Good afternoon, officially. Welcome, everyone. The first of these lessons, if you will, or equip sessions is on how to write a professional email. And in the digital age that we live in at the moment, it's easier than ever to contact people and communicate with them. But with that comes certain issues as well that could arise if you are not skilled in communicating. I think we often think communication is just verbal, in person, you to me kind of thing, but in this day and age, we are able to communicate in so many ways. And we think it's really important that you are skilled in how to write an email. And hopefully, we can give you some tips today on how to do that. So, without further ado, just the contents of today's session. The first thing we're going to deal with is just what is an email, and then we'll look at when you should send one and when you shouldn't send an email, and then some of the do's and don'ts and steps for writing an email, the format and structure of an email, and then Dr. Skinstad and I are going to go through a few scenarios. If we have time at the end, we're going to role play a little bit. Deb, I know you love a bit of role playing, so I'm looking forward to that. All right, good. So let's crack on then. All right, so what is an email? Taken from Dr. Google, him or herself. An email literally stands for electronic mail. And back in the day, before the internet, you had to send mail, you had to post mail to people that you'd want to write letters to, be it a family member, be it a government office, a service provider. You would have to communicate via mail. I'm wondering whether anybody here in the audience has ever sent via post, post stamp address, an old school letter. If you have, maybe you can tell us about your experience in the chat. With the South African Postal Service, it's anybody's guess whether you'll get it anyway. And it used to take a number of days or even longer to communicate with somebody. So a mail back in the day, you would have had to have written a lot of content, a lot of information to try and get as much communication through as possible. And I think in the day of age, or the day and age where we have WhatsApp, and before WhatsApp we had BBM, and before BBM we had Mixit, and before Mixit we had SMS. These letters, these communications got shorter and shorter. So you can just say hello, and you expect that. And then in a second message you can say how are you, and a third message you can say what are you doing today, kind of thing. And that's it's far removed from what written communication used to look like. And obviously email is something that is instantaneous. So somebody would receive it instantly, and we just need to try and discern between what are more informal types of communication, like a WhatsApp or an SMS or something like that, and where do emails stand in this. So these are messages distributed by electronic means from one computer user to one or more recipients via a network. That's the nice thing about email. You can send it to multiple people, right? If you wanted to send an email to Dr. Skinstad as first year coordinator and CC myself as the undergraduate chair, you could send it to both of us. And that's quite useful with an electronic mail as well. We use it for a number of different purposes. I'm just going to just ask everyone to keep their cameras off if they can, and their microphones. Yes, exactly. The penmanship of writing, Dr. Skinstad. That's what we're going to get to today, hopefully. So you would use this for different purposes. Common purposes for an electronic mail might be to contact your friends or communicate with a professor or supervisor or teacher. Maybe you're requesting information, asking for more information about a bursary or a job position or something like that, or you're applying for something like that as well. And depending on your purpose of your email, you would differ in the formality of how you might communicate. So it depends on the outcomes, what you want to achieve from it, and also the audience that you have. And we'll get into some examples of how you can manage that. Right, so when to use an email. This one is probably quite important for all of our listeners. So the first one is that you need to get in touch with a person who's hard to reach. So, for example, somebody who might not be on campus, who might be working from home on that day or from the library, or somebody who is not in your geographic location at all, you know, a colleague, a friend overseas, something like that. Then an email is a great tool. The second part of this is you should use an email when the information you want to share is not time sensitive. So often we'll get an email from a student, for example, saying, you know, I've got a class today and I'm not sure where to be, kind of thing. And that's all fair and well, and it's a valid fear or concern. But if you're sending an email on the same day expecting an immediate response, it depends on whether the person who is intended to receive the email, whether they're even at their laptop or even busy with administrative work. So keep in mind that the person that you are emailing likely only keeps up with emails as part of their job. It's not their whole job. And unless they've promised otherwise, unless you've had a conversation with that person, then you should assume that it could take a few days for them to respond to your message. So it is not, although sending it, and I've put that in the bar on the right here, although sending the email is an instant process, one shouldn't expect an instantaneous response. Then you need to send if you need to send someone an electronic file, this is what email is really great for. So as students at university now, we commonly use Sunlearn and like assignment format for you to drop files as a submission, let's say, for a project. But perhaps there's you are asking a lecturer of yours or former lecturer of yours to complete a reference letter for you, and you need them to complete that reference letter in a certain format, and you've been sent an electronic file or you've downloaded an electronic file, then you can attach that to the email, and that is obviously really useful or beneficial as well. I think my slideshow dropped. Deb, did my slideshow just drop? That's odd. I'm getting it back up. So if you need to attach a electronic file, some sort of electronic file, a data sheet, a letter, a notice, something like that, then email is a fantastic tool for you. And then you can also, of course, use email when you need a written record of the communication. This is something that is really useful about email, is that you've got evidence of messages sent. And this could be really useful for you if you need to follow up with someone, if there's a complaint or a miscommunication and you need to go and refer back to a prior email. Even if you store, in inverted commas, an email to return to it at a later stage so that you can see exactly what was communicated. When not to use an email. So the first piece of advice I would say is if you would hesitate to say something to someone's face, then don't write it in an email. And this is probably true for any written electronic messaging. I'd probably say the same for WhatsApp or SMS or anything like that. But think really closely about the tone, the emotional charge of your email, how it might be interpreted by the person on the other side, because that person can't read your body language when you are typing the email. They can't read your state of mind as well when you type in the email. So, just be careful and think twice before sending an email. When your message is long or complicated or requires additional discussion, something that can be done face-to-face, then preferably you want to do it face-to-face. Now, I know that COVID, the last 2 years has probably robbed you as students, as learners in high school as well, those of you in first year, of this kind of regular face-to-face contact and feeling comfortable to go to someone face-to-face and have a conversation. And we're hoping now more and more that your lecturers, for example, will be on campus, that you can go to them and arrange a meeting, a face-to-face meeting. But the modern day style of face-to-face meetings is exactly as we are doing it right now. Arrange a Zoom meeting, a Teams meeting, a one-on-one session where you can really get to the bottom of a complex matter. If the matter is not capable of being solved via email, then really you should consider a different method of communication. And then related to the previous slide, when I said you should send an email when you want a paper trail, you shouldn't use an email if you are sharing highly confidential information. So keep that in mind, that although you might think that your emails are private between you and the person that you are speaking with, everything, all data these days is stored on a server. It is recorded by the service provider that is providing you with the platform to send the email. So for example, Google will keep a store of your Gmail emails that get sent out. And one Outlook will have a backup, a stored copy of emails that you send out. So even if you go and delete that email, and you you realize you made a mistake and you want to take it back, kind of thing, and you try and delete it, it's likely already been received by someone on the other end, and there will be a backup copy somewhere. Common example of this is how electronic mail and digital mail, digital messaging are commonly used in court cases, in legal cases, where police would go and access files that is used as evidence in legal cases as well. So keep in mind, and we do this a lot, for example, as lecturers, if we get an email from a student that is related to a certain matter and it's not in our portfolio to deal with that, then we will be able to forward on your email to the relevant person. So if it comes to me, but I know it's intended for Dr. Skinstad, then I can very easily just forward on the communication, say, please see this message from Joe Soap, and if you can get back to him, that would be great, kind of thing. And so your email is not private. And even more so, I would say, just be 100% sure of the tone of the email and what it is you're trying to communicate. Right, so here's a couple of do's and don'ts. This is probably my favorite part, and Deb, feel free to chip in here if you want to. So the first thing about this slide, which I think are some do's, is this email that was sent, and I've blacked out the people that sent these emails. Obviously, it's not about singling out anyone. It's just about trying to teach everyone here on what we would expect in a professional email. Some of the do's. This email was great. It was sent. You've got the date there. It was sent with a subject bar. So the second circle there, inquiry about a possible meeting. So there's as soon as this is an email that I received. As soon as that email comes into my inbox, the first thing you will see when you go into your inbox is the subject bar, right? You won't see the full email. The email comes in and you just see the subject bar and who sent it to you. So good that it had a subject bar. It's also well structured. It's got a salutation, dear sir, which is obviously a good sign of respect from a student. And we'll get into different salutations just now. It's also got a good body. So the body of the email is good. It gets to the point. Person would like to set up a meeting with me, for example, and it's also got a closing. So the closing is that very last sentence, if we could possibly arrange a meeting to discuss the matter. So just reaffirming what it is that they want to get out of the email, then that is a good closing. And then a signature, kind regards, and the person's details. So really happy with that. I'm going to see if my... Right, so moving on, same student, same. So what you'll notice here, this was sent a little over 24 hours after the first email was sent to me. The first email was sent around midday on Tuesday, and obviously intended for me to set up a meeting at a certain time, and less than 48 hours later, early morning on a Thursday, an email is sent to somebody else. So you'll probably notice here that this one was sent to Dr. Skinstad, actually, and I was CC'd in the email. So the original email was sent to me, and here you'll notice that the student has, I would say, accused me of being unprofessional for not responding to his email request to set up a meeting. So again, going back to our when not to use an email, if you have an urgent matter, then an email is not the best mode of contact. This was long before COVID. A phone call or coming to the lecturer's office or something like that is a much better way of doing it. Although maybe the student had an assumption that I would be sitting at my email when the email came in and respond immediately. That wasn't the case. Also, an issue here is within the subject bar of the previous email. The previous email asked for a possible meeting at a time that suits you. But it's clear from this meeting that this was an urgent matter that needed to be dealt with, on the same day, possibly, or by the next morning. So something that you can do if something is extremely urgent is you can even flag an email, and you can say, you can use an exclamation point on Outlook, and that lets the receiver know that it's an urgent matter. And if it's extremely urgent, I would even go so far as to say in the subject bar, in bold capitals, urgent, and then the matter, not possible email to set up possible meeting or whatever the original subject bar was. This one's a little bit difficult. So this one's got a lot of good things as well. It's got the dear Mr. de Waal, it's got the salutation, the body, the sign off, the closing. It's also got an attachment, a doctor's note. This is something we get quite common. This one is missing a subject line. So this is an email that I would receive, and all I would see is the student's email address, and that's it. I won't, and maybe I'll see dear Mr. de Waal, because you normally see the first few words of the email. So you've sent me an email, but I don't know what it's about, and I don't know if it's urgent or not. And this is about writing a test the next day, which is a fairly urgent matter. So again, using the subject bar to detail notice of sick or illness, class test, and the date or something like that would be a lot more helpful to the person who's receiving the message, so that they don't prioritize it for a later stage. I think that's something that a lot of people will do when emails are flying into their inboxes. They will look at the email and say, how much of a priority is this based on all of the other work that I need to get through in my 8-hour workday? So subject bar missing there. No subject bar, just an attachment. This is one of my personal favorites here. This happens all the time, and Dr. Skinstad and I have had conversations about, should we just ignore these emails because they're clearly not addressed to us. This was a notice by Professor Clark to a number of students. So there were a number of students who failed to do this. They didn't complete the honesty plugin for an electronic exam, and therefore they failed the exam and needed to come back for a second opportunity. But again, you can see some good email writing here. So the subject, there's A3 assessment, it's quite clear. Greeting the student, salutation, the body, the closing, and then the greeting at the end, and then the response. There we go. No response. No dear Professor Clark or hello Professor Clark, how are you doing? Just straight into the message. Like a WhatsApp conversation, or like you're friends with the person or whatever. Obviously, the student is very unhappy about the situation, and rightly so. It's not nice to fail an exam, but still, in writing a professional email, the etiquette is really important. And at this point, I would have said to Professor Clark, just don't respond, because this clearly wasn't addressed to you. Perhaps the student is talking to himself, but Professor Clark is, obviously very nice person and wants to go out of his way to help. So here's the response. Like, once again, very professional, addresses the person, gives the reason why he needs to return for a second opportunity, reiterates it, and also gives them a plan of action if they're not satisfied, who to contact, and how to take it forward. And then my personal favorite from this conversation, just who is the head of department? Just a one-liner, who is the head of department? Clearly a lack of respect. And then I felt like I had to jump in and educate the student on not being respectful, and also give them a link to how to write an email. And that's probably why we've gotten to this point, because I've given 3 examples here of emails that are poorly structured, but we have these on a daily basis. Right, so the steps for writing a professional email. The first thing is to identify your goal. What do you want to get out of writing your email? What do you expect the recipient to do with the email? Should they communicate with somebody else? Should they provide you with feedback on the document? Should they, assist you with a personal matter or a reference or something like that? What do you want them to do? And make that clear in your email itself. Then, while you're drafting it, consider who you are emailing it to. If you are emailing a lecturer or somebody you haven't met before, or a senior colleague, then you should try and keep your emails free of any jokes and informalities. Keep in mind who the audience is. If it's a friend of yours, somebody you know personally, your brother or your sister or something like that, then it might be a different circumstance. But in a professional email, we should keep in mind who it is that we are communicating with. The third point is to try and keep it concise. Where possible, try and keep an email down to one topic. Don't try and cover multiple topics within one email. If there's a lot of topics and a lot of information, as I've said, rather request a meeting. And you can use an email to request a meeting. Dear so-and-so, I would like to request a meeting to discuss this complex matter. Could you meet me on such and such a date? Yours sincerely, Joseph. And then proofread your email. So to make sure that you kind of give off the impression that you care and that you made an effort. Try and avoid grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes. And also, this is an important one, and the software is quite smart these days to be able to flag this for you, but check for attachments. Oftentimes people will say, please see the document attached relating to this matter, and they send off the email and then there's no document attached. And then it becomes a whole administrative nightmare to go and individually email people documents, or you get a whole bunch of responses back saying there's no attachment, etc. If you're really worried about the tone of your email or the content, you can ask somebody to read it over. Ask a peer, ask a colleague to read over your email and give you their impression on your language and your grammar and all of those things. Use proper etiquette, a courteous greeting and a closing. This is typical for letter writing. I mentioned that right at the beginning. When you used to write a letter, an old school mail, if you would have to address it to somebody, and you would have to say, who is it from? Who is it sent by? So include a courteous greeting. Dear so-and-so, or even if it's somebody that you know well, hi, so-and-so, how are you doing? Just to greet them and keep the email friendly and polite. And remember that other people might be on leave, they might be busy, they might have other tasks on their plate and may not get back to you immediately. And number 6, if they do not get back to you, and I would typically use the 48-hour rule. So if somebody doesn't get back to you within 48 hours, then on that second day, the end of that second day, send a follow-up email. You don't need to necessarily escalate your email immediately to somebody else. You can say, dear Mr. Waal, I noticed that you haven't been able to get back to my previous email. I'm just sending you a reminder to kindly address such and such an issue. Yours sincerely, Joe Soap. And then that will then give the recipient the idea, once again, that this is an urgent matter that you would like them to attend to sooner rather than later. So hopefully those steps will help you to draft your email. Then format and structure. So this is what Dr. Skinstad we're going to go through shortly. Just how to structure an email. So the first thing you must include is a subject line. Just a short phrase that summarizes why you are sending the message, the email, and the goal of the communication. Then a salutation, that is dear so-and-so, and dear is kind of the go-to salutation. But as I said, it might be a little bit less formal if it was a friend or a peer, and it might be even more formal if it's someone you've never met, or it's like a HR practitioner or somebody in an administrative role and you're not sure who they are. So if you don't know who you're talking to, you could use something like to whom it may concern, or that to that extent, so that it goes to somebody. Then the body. This would be the letter, the full message, what you're trying to get across, the full communication, and then the closing would be the last line of the email. And here I would advise to reiterate the request of the email, just so that it's clear exactly what you want to get out of the email. And then lastly, the signature. Identify yourself by name, title, and information. Many people have an email signature that says, where they work, or what their job title is, or what their study expertise are, their qualifications, for example. Right, so we're going to do a couple of case studies. I'm going to stop sharing now. These are the case studies we're going to do. And I will keep my screen shared and send off an email to Dr. Skinstad, and then she will send it back to me. And while we're doing this in the process, we'll chat it through as well. So the first case study we're going to do is an email to your year group coordinator about a failed module or error on your mark. So I'm going to play the role of the student. I'm a first year student who received a lower mark than expected. Maybe I went and calculated my mark, and it doesn't add up to the mark that I'm seeing on the system. And I would like to bring that to the attention of the first year coordinator. Right, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so new email. This is what your Outlook probably looks like. So first thing that I need is the person's email address, and then I'm going to put in a subject line. So this is your first step. So I'm going to make the subject line error on SW184 final mark, and I'll put my student number. This is my student number from back in the day. So it's very clear what this is about. Error on my mark. Maybe as a student, I think that this is an urgent email, so I can send this as a high importance email. I'm really worried that, that my mark is going to be fixed and it's going to be lower than it is for whatever reason. So I send it as high importance. Reality is, with this kind of issue, it's almost always not high importance, but I can understand maybe as a student you would be really worried about this. So the first or the second component after the subject line is the salutation. So, dear Dr. Skinstad. Okay, Dr. Skinstad is not your friend. She's not your peer. She is the first year coordinator at the department. So to show the due respect that I should, I'm going to say, dear Dr. Skinstad. Then I'm going to do a greeting, which is maybe just something like, I hope you are well. I'd like to bring an urgent matter to your attention. I noticed, so now I can maybe give a line, and I've said here, I've noticed on my .sun that my final mark for SW1F4 reflects as 52%. However, good grammar, however, when I calculated my own mark based on the average for each sport, I returned a mark of 75%. And maybe that's a crazy discrepancy, so you can make it clear. This is a large discrepancy, and I'm not sure what is causing this. Please, could you assist me in rectifying, and then you use your spelling assist, rectifying the situation. I'm not sure who I should speak to about this matter, but I know you are the first year coordinator, and I thought you might be able to help. So there I've been quite succinct in terms of what I want. I need this change to happen, and I need it to happen rather urgently. Maybe in closing I could say, I'm worried that this mark will reflect permanently on my record. Please, can you help by putting me, so again, giving them the instruction, putting me in contact with the correct person to address this. So maybe you don't know who it is that is supposed to do this, and you just want some assistance on getting to the bottom of it. In this case, I would say kind regards. That's a fairly polite, sign off on an email. Here you've got my details, and you can send that through to Dr. Skinstad. So I'm going to send it to her now, just for a bit of role play, and give her a chance to respond to that, so that we can see how she might respond. And while I do that, I'm just going to come back to the side. So Dr. Skinstad's off doing that. You'll notice in that email, I tried to keep the tone of the email polite. I could very easily have flipped my lid and said, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this mistake. How have you done this? Are you incompetent at your job? All of the things that I might be thinking, seething on this side of the laptop. But remember that when you are trying to communicate something, that the only way to have effective communication is to have respect within your communication. If you are not treating the person on the other end of the email with respect, then you should be almost certain that they would not treat you with respect in how they go about doing their work. So I think it's an important lesson that even in the case of a serious issue, and these issues do happen. I've made mistakes before, right at the end of putting a mark into a system, and I slipped my finger and pressed the wrong number. It happens. And so, we're all human beings and we all make mistakes. So in this case, we're not sure what the error was. We think that we have been hard done by, we've been cheated out of a mark, but we don't know how to address it, and we're just reaching out for help, reaching out for assistance from the lecturer. While I wait for Dr. Skinstad's response, I'm just going to check out what our next case study is. So next one is email to a peer on a group project, outlining the tasks they need to complete. All right, so this is a peer-to-peer email, and I'm sure many of you will get group projects on your undergraduate and even postgraduate journey. So it's quite common to have to communicate with a group of people. So we'll go through that shortly, just waiting on the response. Are there any questions at this point? Maybe we can use this time to chat. I've seen the messages in the chat, and we'll have this recording available afterwards. But is everyone on the same page? No hands? Yes, there's a hand. Is it a Mr. Weber? I hope I've pronounced that correctly, or Weber. And you can use your microphone if you want, or pop it in the chat.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, I can hear you.
Okay, so I would just like to ask, I have a question regarding the timetable. Because we have the group 1, 2, and 3 for BA allocated by name, but then we also have group 1, 2, and 3 allocated by gender.
Is this for first year?
Yes.
Okay. I think let's address that right at the end, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I just don't want to disrupt the purpose of this session, but let's just complete this this session, then we'll do that at the end. What time is your next class, Mr. Weber?
I'm done for today. It's
Okay.
sports practical tomorrow at 11.
Okay, cool. So what we can do just at the end of this session, you can maybe stay on the line, and we can quickly finish that up, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Cool. Dr. Skinstad, are you coming right there with your response?
Mr. Duval, I feel like I'm writing a manuscript here.
You're writing me an email. You're writing me a long email here.
I kind of cheated because of my inbox currently. It's ironic we're doing this because my inbox is overflowing with emails. So yes, I found yours. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. All right, I'm going to role play while Dr. Skinstad gets back to me on the first one. I will start to role play the second one. We can do that in the meanwhile. So the second one was a group project scenario where we need to outline to the group what their relevant tasks are. So I would say, let's say I've been assigned as the group leader, and now I need to send this to my peers on the project. So I'll send it to, let's say my peers on the project are the following people. There's 5 of us in the project. Again, subject line might be the module code. So let's go with SW332 group project, roles and responsibilities. All right, so now it's very clear what the email is about. When these peers of mine get this email, they'll know what it's all about. This is not a high importance email. This is something they can attend to in the next 48 hours plus. And so I'm going to put in here, and again, now I'm speaking to my peers. So I still want to give a greeting. So maybe I'll do something like, hi guys, perfectly fine, still polite, it's perfectly acceptable. Or hello all, something like that. How are you all doing? I hope you enjoyed class today as much as I did. I've put that as tongue-in-cheek because it's my class, so I hope that you would enjoy it. And then with regards to the group semester project, I've outlined the following roles and responsibilities for each group member. And then here I'll say, let's maybe use bullets. Simon, group leader, coordinates all of the matters below and follow up with group members prior to deadlines. And then number 2, let's say Debbie, you're going to be our literature search. Conduct a literature search and send group members 9 to 12 research articles. For example, maybe you want to give a deadline by 23 Feb 2022. Then Wilbur, you're going to be the introduction. So write the introduction to the lit review, and so on and so forth. So for each one you'd give it. And then maybe again you can say, please confirm that you have read and understand your role for the project. And here you can maybe say regards, a little bit less formal than kind regards, and your sign off. So there, once again, we've been quite clear. We've got all of the components of the email, but again, it's maybe just a little bit less formal and a bit more conversational. I'm not going to send this one off because I think it's quite clear, and I don't think we need to do a role play on that one. So here's Dr. Skinstad's response. Thank you very much, Dr. Skinstad. So I've got an email back. Thank you for the email. So first of all, my initial email, so that happens automatically. So I know when I get it in my inbox, okay, here's a response on the email. Dear Simon, thank you. And you'll notice she used my first name. So she's probably used my first name because I'm a student of hers, and it's acceptable for her to use my first name, although I will want to continue to use her full name. She signed off as Dr. Skinstad. That gives you an indication that she is more comfortable if I respond to her as Dr. Skinstad. If she responded there as Debbie or something like that, maybe I would respond in that same way, but she's been quite clear. So I would immediately start by, when I respond, dear Dr. Skinstad. And let me just see what she said. Thank you for the email. So she's thanked me for the email, which is important. It's good etiquette and bring it to my attention. She's affirming what the issue is. My records reflect that you did not do as well in the particular class, Indigenous game. I'll follow up with the person by the end of the week, and I trust this will work for you. She hopes that it's helpful. So the response to that is, dear Dr. Skinstad, maybe I want to thank her first. So thank you very much for looking into the matter for me. I appreciate your effort because she's taken effort out of her day to rectify this information. And I could say there, I'm saddened to hear about my Indigenous Games mark. I thought I had done much better than that. I would appreciate it if you could let me know what Miss Abuki's feedback is, and look forward to hearing more at the end of the week. So here you can see we've established a timeline for this matter. You know, she mentioned the end of the week. I've said, I hear you, end of the week. If I then don't hear back from her on Monday morning, I can send an email and say, dear Dr. Skinstad, I'm following up on our previous communication. You mentioned you'd be able to get it to me by the end of the week, for example, and so on and so forth. You know, once again, yours sincerely, and signed off nicely like that. So we're not going to continue on this case study forever. I think it's quite clear on what's to be expected. Just on the last case study, I don't think we're going to quite have time to go through it. So the last one was request to Marty Sport, and I just wanted to show you an example there. So for example, new email, if it's to Marty Sport and I'm not sure who to send it to, maybe I've got a generic address that is for the Marty's Sport Club, and I can say leave of absence, and maybe I'll put in here Simon de Waal, SU 162-40294. So I want them to know who the leave of absence request is for, but I don't know who I'm speaking to. So I'm going to say to whom it may concern. My lecturers have requested a leave of absence form, which they tell me must be issued by my sport club. Maybe you can be vulnerable and say, I've never had to deal with this issue before and am in need of assistance. Please, could you help me in or by issuing a leave of absence for my upcoming varsity cup fixture, upcoming varsity cup fixture, and maybe you should give a date, 23 Feb 2022 against Tux. And then once again, I appreciate your effort. Please let me know if I can provide any more details to you. And then you don't know who it is, a little bit more formal, yours sincerely, and who it is. So there, it's very short, succinct. It's got all of the elements of the, you know, the email that you would want. You're very clear on what you need, and you should get a response from that. Maybe you don't know exactly who to send it to, so you're going to CC your coach in it, because maybe your coach will know who you need to send it to, for example. And that might be a smart idea to make sure that there's a paper trail, once again, evidence that you did send this out. That might be a smart thing to do. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. So I'm going to come back to my slides. So I'm just going to quickly share my slides. I know we've just run out of time, just so you can see the references if you do want to go and upskill yourself a little bit more. And then we're going to close off this this meeting. So just a thank you, and then the references if you would like to go onto those websites and learn a little bit more, some tools, how to do it.